Yeah, thank you all for coming. Welcome to Redweb. I'm Leigh Darlow, I'm the QA director here. I'm going to speak a little bit about quality assurance and how the role has had to adapt in DevOps. I'll touch a bit on the culture, how and where we test, some principles and processes. Some of it's a little bit aspirational. We're quite early on our journey, but I think we made some quite good ground last year, and I feel like we've got a fairly good plan going forward, but I think these meetups are going to sort of help influence some of the things we do. So I wanted to talk about the shift left. This is quite a hot topic in the testing community at the minute. It's the idea of testing earlier on in the process. As you can see from my high-tech graph, the earlier you find a bug in the process, the cheaper it is to fix. So it's in our interest to catch things earlier. If they manifest later down the line, it costs a lot more. So quality assurance needs to happen throughout. We can add value at every stage. Right from inception, we can identify any ambiguities. That's a tricky one to say. Challenge understanding, making sure everything's well considered. We can ask the questions, what happens in this circumstance, etc. We don't want to be asking those questions when it comes to implementation. As a result of this, we're having to work more closely with other roles, such as design and the sort of solutions architects and so on. We're no longer limited to the end like a traditional tester. We're involved throughout. There's a greater pressure to get things right first time with DevOps. The whole idea is pushing through change more quickly. So I think there's an increased pressure on actually getting things through first time, catching things earlier. We're just moving away from releases being held up by massive rounds of QA. We're putting smaller incremental changes live. So that means more's asked of a QA analyst. They need a greater breadth of skills. They need to be able to work with others. They'll be providing process assurance throughout the whole life cycle rather than just testing at the very end. So I think this leads on quite nicely to the Agile Testing Manifesto. This is a company, I think in New Zealand, that had written this called Growing Agile. You can find it on Google. There's a nice little graphic that comes with it. I don't think it's by any means comprehensive, but I think it helps capture some of the values of DevOps within testing. So testing throughout over testing at the end. As I mentioned previously, traditionally testing came last. We have to catch things earlier. We can automate more checks as we build as well. Preventing bugs over finding bugs. Again, it links into the previous slide. The cost of which it takes to fix bugs later down the line. Teams should be taking more responsibility for all output, getting the early stages right. Any ambiguities should be thrashed out. All of the planning, discovery, tech and visual design should be well considered and challenged. And implementations should have quality built in, which is something I'll touch on later. Ultimately, this means we can get change through more quickly. And the next point, testing understanding over checking functionality. Testers shouldn't be spending their time checking the application works sort of as it did previously. Automated tests are much better for this. Sorry, where did I get to? Instead, they should focus their time on making sure that everyone understands what the customer actually needs and how it should work before any code is written. As QA, we're advocates for our clients. Not only do we have to make sure we're building it right, but are we building the right thing? Building the best system over breaking the system. We're not there to find bugs, as I think sort of attitudes have been sort of previously. We don't want to be breaking the system. We want to be proving it's fit for purpose. and team responsibility for quality over testing responsibility. The DevOps culture's all about the roles working closer together, being more collaborative, communicating, breaking down silos. Each role should be looking out for one another, not just their own best interests. So everyone has a part to play right from inception to ensure that what is delivered is of satisfactory quality. So yeah, cultural changes. I think this is just more of a kind of wider look at things. At Redweb, we're always looking at ways we can do things better. We're continually reviewing and refining the way we work with our clients. We're having more clients integrated within our project teams. We're actually placing teams within our clients' businesses themselves. So it's paramount we get this culture right. This is stuff we just started looking at last year. So as a business, we're going through a bit of a shift. And the cultural changes are probably hardest to measure and implement. And everyone in the business has a responsibility to help influence this. We've looked at our company values. I think that ties in quite well to DevOps culture. Our handbook, the way that's written, it really sort of reiterates the message of these values. Things like inductions and line managers and mentoring, I think that can all help to influence the culture. So this next slide, a lot of that's been taken from a guy called Martin Fowler. I don't know if anyone's come across him. I think his blog's very good, and I think particularly the stuff around culture's really quite good. The quote at the top I think is quite poignant. Even with the best tools, DevOps is just another buzzword if you don't have the right culture. On the left, we've got quite a nice visualization of what's expected at a team level and an organisational level. No silos, autonomous teams, building quality in, feeding back, automating more, and sharing responsibility. I think interestingly, the graph on the right, the tech is only 8% of it. The people issues and the process issues are probably what we should be concentrating most of our time on. I think it's quite easy as tech companies to look at the tech first and then follow with the rest of it. But if you haven't got so where to test? So I think this might be a little bit excessive and I don't know, over the top maybe, but it's a very prominent image going around in the testing community at the moment. In an ideal world, you test everywhere, test all the time, but you got to be pragmatic. There are other things to take into consideration: cost, responsiveness. There's other practicalities there. But I think the point is that the test approach needs to be looked at strategically to ensure optimum confidence and coverage every time something happens. We look towards a risk-based approach, but again, I think this links into the earlier bits around everyone playing a role in this, testing throughout, over-testing at the end. So this leads me on to my triangle. Well, not my triangle, but the testing triangle or pyramid. We need to automate more. As a result of a demand to increase responsiveness and pushing change through with a faster time to market. Having layers of tests run each time code is committed or merged or deployed, etc., helps catch a bug earlier, which we know is cheaper. This is what many are calling building quality in. This has to be thought about right from the beginning. It's very hard to implement some of those lower layers retrospectively. But yeah, I think the triangle generally, it's a bit contentious with testers. It has its skeptics, but I don't think it's a bad starting point for how things should look from a testing point of view. You can consider other things like non-functional tests and static code analysis and so on. The theory being that Testing gets pushed as low down the triangle as possible. The tests are cheaper and quicker to run at those layers. You don't want to be necessarily running loads and loads of Selenium tests at this UI level when you can actually test the business logic lower down. The breadth of the triangle also represents the quantity of tests at each layer. What's that? So I think sort of at this unit testing level, QAs don't necessarily have the right skill set, and I think developers don't always think like testers. So we have to work in an advisory role here. We can help sort of say, have you considered this? Have you thought about that? And so on, and help shape those unit tests. It can take some persuasion to sort of influence this, to get them to write them. But undoubtedly, I think we write better code, which is more maintainable and more supportable as a result of this. But there's a lot of focus on automation. And people get quite carried away with it. I think there's still a role for the manual tester in the little yellow cloud at the top. The automated tests are checks. They're checking if anything has changed as a result of the work completed. But a lot of value can still be added from the manual tester. They cannot be replaced. Learning about the system, questioning what has been built, making sure it's fit for purpose. This links back into the challenging and questioning mentioned in the Agile Testing Manifesto and the Shift Left side slides. I had the test magazine put on my desk yesterday. There's quite a good quote from Dan Ashby at eBay saying that testers aren't going to be completely automated. There's all the talk of the UI and AI and machine learning and so on. I know they can assist, but he was saying that it's the difference between asserting expectations and exploring unexpected unknowns, which I think is quite a nice quote. So obviously with DevOps we have the pipeline. This is one of the first ones we put together. I think it's had a bit of refinement since then, but with DevOps and continuous development, integration or delivery or whatever you're doing, it's fundamental in being able to automate more, increasing responsiveness, and still having control over quality. We can work incrementally, putting small changes live, introducing less risk as we automate much more. You haven't got a manual tester ticking the same boxes over and over again. As a team, we've needed to develop an understanding of continuous integration tools. To exercise control, we have quality gates. With manual approval, all roles can review the output of the automated tests. So it won't pass to the next stage till it's had the necessary sign-off. We can also set automated thresholds on certain stages, so we can say, if your response time is over a certain amount, we'll reject that release. I think there's a conference I went to last year where a guy at EE was talking about the sort of attitudes they've got there, and he was saying that QAs are actually getting told off for catching bugs now. It should have been caught much before it actually came over for a manual exploratory test. So I thought that was quite interesting. We're not quite at that point yet though. So yeah, I think with the DevOps sort of figure of 8, part of it is the continuous improvement. We have a part to play in this. The feedback loop. We need to learn and adapt. As a team, we can provide metrics. There's been some good advances in the management tools, such as Azure DevOps. We've got and Jira. We've got real-time dashboards. The server monitoring. That's monitoring our solutions. We can learn from. We can see what's happened as a result of pushing a release live. We can look at root cause analysis, for example, and say, why are these things happening? How do we prevent that happening next time? So we can analyse the output of putting a release live, and we can justify recommendations in ways of working. So I think we've got a part to play in those retrospectives and actually learning from the work that we've done. So I'll rattle through that quite quickly. To summarise, we're involved throughout now. There's a lot more challenging and questioning throughout the whole process. The role's turning into a more process assurance role, not just the traditional tester testing at the end. We're more collaborative, with a greater breadth of skills. There's a more strategic approach to testing. We're advisory at times, and we're continually improving the process. Again, in that same magazine, Dan Ashby at eBay said 2019 is going to be a year of more continuous testing, continually conducting more investigative testing earlier throughout the software development lifecycle. So it sounds like we're going down the right path. So thank you. That's a lot. Are there any questions? Or? Oh, yeah.
So on your pipeline,
Yes.
where is your security testing?
We've got it running on every release. Yeah, throughout all the environments.
So which on your triangle of your hierarchy triangle?
Yeah, this is the contentious triangle. I did mention there's sort of non-functional tests to add to this as well. So we've also, oh, it's gone. So I clicked on it. Yeah, we have load tests, accessibility tests, OWASP tests, all running on every time we deploy to an environment, and we can set thresholds on those. We don't rely on those tools alone, but yeah, there are security tests running every single time we deploy somewhere. Cool. Is there anything else? Or? Hiya.
Is it putting these sort of processes in, is it improving your delivery time to a customer? Is it taking longer but the quality's better? Probably a good question actually.
I think we're fairly early on with a lot of this stuff. I think on the ones I've worked on, I think, yeah, we are getting more things over more quickly and of a better quality. I think it probably on both fronts it is improving things. But as I say, we've dabbled on a few, and then there's probably 3 or 4 projects we're kind of fully immersed on it. It's not, we've not been doing a lot of this stuff for a great length of time to be able to really say this is a case study and what a great benefit there is of it. But you know, this is kind of, as I say, a little bit aspirational, some of it. A lot of it we are doing. But yeah, I'd say that the sort of more recent ones we've worked on both fronts, it has improved our responsiveness and quality of delivery. Yeah.
How do you cope with documentation testing? I'm thinking things like user guide in the old days, the help screens on a UI, the tooltips, etc. That's all has to all be manual.
Yeah, well, there's still sort of parts of the process that can't be automated. Like I say, we have an involvement throughout where there is manual training guides and things like that. We review them. There's still a lot of value in the manual tester to make sure that any sort of assets like that, they do review them and make sure that they're a sufficient standard. Yeah, like I say, you can't automate everything.
And have you got your development teams engaged in writing those help screens, etc. early enough?
Yeah, I think they're quite. Yeah, I think they're quite receptive to things like that. If there are certain improvements that we think we can make, or they're always thinking about our clients and how they can make things easier for them. So yeah, so some of the systems we have helper text alongside fields about what they do. Yeah, I think our developers are quite receptive to that side of things. Anything else? Cool. Thank you.